If I can have everybody's attention, we're going to get ready to have our dinner here. Just a quick announcement about dinner itself. When you go through the line, you're going to have some choices. You can have beef tips with noodles, or there will be pasta, and you're going to have your choice of two different sauces, a meatless sauce and an Alfredo sauce. So when you go through the line, you're going to get those kind of choices. So if you don't want a meatless sauce, if you need that, and again, beef tips and noodles, or pasta with a meatless sauce or an Alfredo sauce. Those are some of the choices you have besides the other items. So if everybody will find their seats, we're going to give the invocation, and then we'll eat. So Denny Bachtel, or Dennis Bachtel, our chairman, board of directors, will give the invocation.
If you bow your heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today for all the men and women who have served in our armed forces. We are grateful for their dedication, discipline, faithfulness, and courage. From them, we may learn the virtues of selfless service, unwavering loyalty to country, the discipline of teamwork for the good of all, obedience to authority, and perseverance in difficult and challenging situations. Bless the families of our veterans for their sacrifices made on the home front when duty called their loved ones away. Following their military service, give each of our veterans meaningful employment where they can enrich our workplaces and communities with their strong leadership, skills, their self-discipline, and their hearts for service. We pray that you will provide your care and healing power for our veterans who carry physical and mental wounds from their days of service. And we lift up to your care those families who have lost a member in our armed forces in the line of duty. May your constant presence and help be theirs. We pray that today we will be able to express to our veterans our gratitude for their service to us. Keep our servicemen and women strong and determined. As we thank them, we look forward to the day promised in your word when our Prince of Peace will rule on earth and when the bearing of arms to protect our citizens will no longer be necessary. We pray in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, the first row here, you can go back and get in line. When you have a general in the line, you get to go first. All right, we're going to begin our program for this evening. If everyone will stand for the posting of the colors. The colors tonight will be posted by the Ohio Military Reserve's Honor Guard. Honor Guard detail, post colors. Please remain standing for the national anthem. You may be seated. We're going to bring you
I remember a
name
teacher
from
that
the
I had.
past.
Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer, I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. He says, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
I believe most everybody in here remembers who Red Skelton was. So I want to welcome everybody to MAPS Air Museum's 12th Annual Veterans Program. My name is Dave Connor. I am the Director of Operations here. And of course, we're going to be honoring all of our veterans who fought in wars, who served here on the home front, those men and women who stood up when our country called, those who put their lives on the line, both on the home front and, of course, overseas. Also tonight, we are going to be highlighting members and units of the 107th Armored Cavalry Regiment. As a former member and veteran of the 3rd Squadron 107th Cavalry Regiment, it is an honor to have my brother Aviation Regiment here. So this hangar that you're located in right now, that our museum is located in, used to be used for quite a long time by the 107th Armored Cavalry Regiment, the aviation units. And it was approximately around 1961 that they moved into here. So the helicopters you see here, these are our museum's helicopters. There were other helicopters here when the unit first arrived at this museum, or I should say at this hangar. There was the OH-58 Kiowa, the AH-1 Cobra, the H-19 Chickasaw, the H-10 Sioux. If you remember the show Maps, that was the one that they used at the beginning of the MASH show. The H-34 Choctaw, and of course the iconic UH-1 Huey, and then eventually the UH-60 Black Hawk. At this time, we want to honor all those veterans who are here and those services that they were a part of. So all those who are in the Army, will you please stand?
Hear them shout, cows are marching all about, and these kiss hearts go rolling along. For it's high, high beat in the field artillery. Count out the numbers on us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And wherever you go, you will always know that those kiss hearts go rolling along.
Navy veterans.
Until we meet once more, here's wishing you a happy voyage home. We're always ready for
Coast Guard veterans.
we place our trust in thee. Through howling gale and shot and shell to win our victory. Sandberg provides is our guide, our pledge, our motto too. We're always ready to or die. I Coast Guard, we fight for you.
Air Force veterans.
Starting a faithful thunder up with one terrible roar. We live in faith, we're down in faith, for nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force.
United States Marine Corps.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First we fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor free. We are proud to claim the title of United States.
and our youngest and newest, Space Force.
Mighty watch the light, guarding lands beyond the blue. The invisible front line, for fighters brave and true. Won't you reach into space? There's no limit to our sky. Standing guard both night and day, bring the Space Force from on high.
So before we go on, I want to highlight a little bit about the helicopters you see around you today. Of course, these are all part of Map Air Museum's collection. The OH-51 Kiowa here to my left. Back there, the venerable AH-1 Cobra. That one is a big hit, obviously, with the children. As soon as they see the teeth painted on it and those canopies open, they immediately want to head towards that helicopter. The one you see over here to my right, the H-19 Choctaw. This one we just rolled out of our restoration in the beginning of summer, late spring. This helicopter looks absolutely beautiful right now. But before our restoration crew started it, it was absolutely, you could not even tell what it was hardly. There was so many holes in it, not much skin left. They worked long and hard, and actually, I am always amazed at the magic that our restorations crew do with these, when you see these basically hulks and just metal piles and what they do and how they restore these so that younger generations and everybody could come and see these helicopters. Now this one here was worked on by a large portion of our restoration department. Many crews, many of our volunteers put a lot of hours, many years, and a lot of work into this one. Frustrating at times, but they overcame everything, and it looks like it is a really, really awesome looking helicopter. So at this time, everybody here that has worked on this helicopter, would you please stand? Thank you. So the Kiowa and the Cobra were part of the 107th ACR. The H-19, that one made its rounds throughout the country and through many other National Guard units, Air Guard and the National Guard, and it started out, I believe, with an Air Guard unit a long time ago. At this time, I would like to present Colonel Reed Kimball, United States Army retired.
Going to be a tough act to follow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to thank you for attending our Veterans Day celebration, where you once again get to listen to this demented old soldier make a speech. Veterans Day is a celebration where we pause to honor not only those that served in our nation's armed forces and those who still protect our freedoms today, but also the families and loved ones of those that served. A group of men gathered in a railroad car in Campagny, France at 5 o'clock in the morning on November 11th, 1918. Ending 3 days of hurried negotiations, the participants were gathered to finalize an armistice agreement that would become effective at 11 o'clock that day. At the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, the guns fell silent. The fighting stopped and the conflict that came to be known as the Great War ended. That armistice ended a conflict that had raged across Europe and the Middle East for almost 53 months. Contemporary Europeans also referred to it as the war to end all wars due to their perception of its then unparalleled scale and devastation. In this celebration of Veterans Day, pause and remember the origins of the day, what Armistice Day represented, and the price paid by millions on both sides of the conflict that never came home. 106 years ago, the guns fell silent, if only for a few short years. As subsequent events would unfortunately verify, that war did not prove to be the war to end all wars, as conflicts continue even to the present day. It would be hard to believe that the men who fought the Great War could ever have imagined that young American men and women would be asked again and again to fight and die for freedoms in foreign lands. We should also consistently remind ourselves that those that founded this nation, conceived in liberty, never used the words I or me or my in the Constitution of the United States, but rather started it with a short paragraph that read, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States." It often appears that we have strayed somewhat from what our forefathers envisioned. Still, we persevere as a nation, despite our differences. In today's complex, highly polarized country, too many people think of freedom as the right to do, say, and act as they please, and not as the opportunity to do what is right. Where freedom of speech too often equates to freedom to promote racism, radicalism, or to communicate lies, threats in public or on social media platforms, we often fail to see the good in or to even define the term we the people. The foundation of the freedoms that we enjoy were forged and protected not by those Americans that simply believed that they were entitled to those rights, but rather by the ones that stepped forward to win them and then to preserve them. We join here today not just to remember, but to honor those young men and women that have earned the right to the title veteran, while continuing to emphasize our differences instead of the equality for all that our founding fathers envisioned. We join here to celebrate all those that have served together in a common cause. For those here tonight who have never served, here are some basic facts about veterans. For those veterans in the audience, they should bring back a number of memories. We left home as teenagers or in the early 20s for an unknown adventure. We loved our country enough to defend it and protect it with our own lives. We said goodbye to friends and family and everything we knew. We learned the basics, and then we scattered in the winds to the far corners of the earth. We found new friends and a new family. We became brothers and sisters, regardless of color, race, or creed. We had plenty of good times and plenty of bad times. We didn't get enough sleep. We smoked and drank too much. We picked up both good and bad habits. We worked hard and played harder. We didn't earn a great wage. We experienced the happiness of mail call, the devastation of the Dear John letter, and the sadness of missing important events. We didn't know when or even if we were to ever see home again. We grew up fast, and yet somehow we never grew up at all. We fought for our freedoms as well as the freedoms of others. Some of us saw actual combat, and some of us didn't. Some of us saw the world, and some of us didn't. Some of us dealt with physical warfare. Most of us dealt with psychological warfare. We have seen, experienced, and dealt with things that we can't fully describe or explain. We participated in time-honored ceremonies and rituals, strengthening our bonds with fellow veterans. We counted on each other to get the job done, and sometimes to survive it at all. I'd like to finish up tonight with some of my own memories. While they may not mean much to a majority of those here tonight, they will live with me forever. I left my small hometown and saw a world that most today will never see, understand, or appreciate. A world that in many ways no longer exists. I learned not just who I was, but what I could be. I learned that while rank may give you authority and responsibility, It is the person that wears the rank that earns trust, respect, and loyalty. I learned that I did not have all the answers, but that we had most of them. I still see the faces of those I served with, despite the fact that I have not seen them for years and may never see them again. I still remember the good times and the bad times. I can recall the joys and sorrows with a clarity that many of us never found again once we left the service. We all dressed alike. We ate the same food, faced the same long hours, and despite differences in rank, we knew that when the chips were down, we could count upon each other. Most of us realized that our service, whether it be 2 years or 4 years or over 20, were some of the most important of our lives as we served something bigger than any one individual. These are just a few of the things that have become part of me and the memories that resurface, particularly on Veterans Day. Thank you for listening, and thank you for attending our ceremony.
Before our next speaker comes up here, I would like for us veterans to honor and pay tribute to some people special to us, those of our family members, those wives, those husbands, those mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, girlfriends and fiancés, because if it wasn't for them supporting us in everything we did, going through emotional times and worrying about our safety and all the things happening to us, it would also have made our deployments and our time in the service much harder. So at this time, would any family members of veterans please stand? Us veterans, we veterans would like to thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Brigadier General Tom Lazinski, United States Army retired.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited about the number of people that showed up. And I made personal calls to maybe 50 people, and there was a lot of them that wanted to come but couldn't come for health reasons or whatever. But I personally want to welcome everyone, whether you're a veteran or whether you're 107th or some other unit. So what I would like to ask a couple questions. First one is, those people, I'm not going to make you stand again, but for those people that were in the 107th, just raise your hand. So you look around. For those people that were in the 416th Engineer Group, would you raise your hand? For those people who were in the 1416th Transportation or Maintenance Company, please raise your hand. So before I get started on some history, the historical stuff, I just want to mention that there were all kinds of units here. And at one time, we were somewhere around 65 or 70 helicopters. And I have personal attachment to this place because I started in the National Guard after 6 years active duty. I came here and signed in to the National Guard right in this building in 1974. So, and there's a lot of people out there that are here today that were here when I was there. So it's a long time. It's about 50 years, and it's very exciting to come back, and that's why I keep coming back to MAPS. It's really exciting. And I have a couple other people who couldn't make it. Charlie Fletcher, he was our maintenance officer, and he was an instructor pilot, and he's still around, and he lives only a mile or two from here, but he was scheduled to come. He sent a check in and everything, but he couldn't make it. I called him today, and he said he was sorry, but he wanted to extend his courtesies to everyone. So as we get into as we get into the part about the background for the 107th, and I'm going to primarily talk about the 107th, but there's a lot of units affiliated one way or other, and there's a lot of people. This was in the National Guard. There's 2 facilities that were like this. One here at Akron Canton, and now there's a new one, and then there was one in Columbus. So anyone that wanted to be in an aviation unit had to drill in 1 or 2 of those places. And we had people from Pittsburgh area, we had people from Detroit area, Indiana, so we had it from all over. So in our unit, there's a lot of people that did a lot of traveling, and they had to do a lot of traveling to get here. In fact, Gary Guttrell is just back. He was here in 74, 75, and he's living in Indiana now, and he came over because it's that important. So as you look around in the Guard, and I'm going to kind of do this generically because there are some people who weren't in the Guard that don't know much about it, but you're going to be on active duty a couple weeks a year, and if you get activated, then you're going to be out for a little bit longer. As you can tell in the current status that we're in, there's about 50% of the military force structure is in the National Guard or reserves. And in the last 5 to 10 years, most of those have been activated a number of times. Some of the aviation assets have been activated probably at least 3 times. In Afghanistan with the Black Hawks and stuff like that, and Chinooks now. So now I'm going to start into the part that I hope that I'm not going to put anybody to sleep. But there's the 107th is actually started out as a cavalry regiment, the Cleveland Cavalry Regiment in Cleveland, and it was 1866, I believe. Yeah, 1886, I'm sorry. And there were units placed all over Ohio. That's what the National Guard does, pretty much. They try to find locations, cities, airports, and other facilities where they can actually have an organization meet. And we used to have our drill right here on the floor. We'd come in, and we'd have the pilots and the mechanics. Everyone would show up in the morning, hopefully, and then at the end of the day, they would leave. So, and that happens in the whole area in northeastern Ohio, and it was primarily the 107th. It later became, I forgot what year it was now, but it was, the 107th was activated before World War II, and then at the very beginning of World War II, they sent a lot of troops from the 107th out to California for training. Eventually, and I did talk to somebody tonight that was in the 107th during World War II, and they got activated and they went to Europe, and they served as a reconnaissance unit, which is what the primarily purpose and mission of the 107th Armored Cavalry Regiment. It's a reconnaissance unit. It was an independent force, and even our unit, our small unit, the aviation unit, which didn't show up until the 60s, but it was self-contained. So we had our own not doctor, but we had medics, and we had cooks and chefs and maintenance people and stuff like that, pilots, mechanics, logisticians, stuff like that. So anyway, they got some experience in World War II. Then they came back, and everything kind of calmed down for a little while. And then post-war, after World War II, they came back to the northeastern Ohio area. And then in the 60s and 70s primarily is when the aviation units pretty much got activated right here. So as you look through what happened in Ohio, if you're familiar with, if you lived here for probably longer than I did, but there was a lot of things going on in northeastern Ohio, including Cleveland. And I'm talking trucker strikes and some other kind of issues that they had, including Kent State. And the Guard has a twofold mission. One is the federal mission, which I talked about before, and the second part is the state mission. So it wasn't unusual for only selected people being called up to go support like a flood or disaster area in Powhatan Point, and there was other places where we had to go and send aircraft down there for maybe a couple weeks. So that's the kind of the mission behind some of that. So we have the, in the 60s and 70s with the activation of the units, here at Akron Canton, we ended up with the N Troop, first it was N Troop Air, and then later, and they're good, the Army is good about changing names and telling you what you're supposed to be doing now and you weren't doing before, or maybe you were doing the same thing, but they call it something different. So we had N Troop Air, and I remember when I came in, we had 3 cavalry, or 3 scout, we had a scout platoon, an attack platoon, and in the scout platoon we had 12 or 13 OH-58s, like you see over here. And then we didn't have the Cobras initially. We had the Charlie Mike models, which is a Huey modified for shooting. We also had a Huey's, the UH-1H, which is after this one here, over here, H-19. And we had a headquarters company, and we had a maintenance company, or maintenance platoon, I should say. And they handled all the stuff, the administration and logistics for all of that. So that's kind of the background of the aviation units. Well, after several years, they changed it from N Troop Air to just 107th Air Troop. And nothing changed as far as numbers, and people might have changed a little bit, but not much. And the interesting thing in that, the end of when I got here in '74, probably we had about 65, I think somewhere around 65 pilots, and probably 80% of them were already qualified by having returned from Vietnam. So they had a lot of experience. And out of that, we had probably, I'm going to guess, 60 or 70% were captains that became warrant officers. And I wasn't sure if you were waving at me or you're just hot. That's all right, no problem. I'm a little hot myself. But so anyway, so those units changed from time to time, and then after we vacated this location, I think it was 88 or 89, and we went to the new facility. So then it went back to it was reverted back to the airport itself. And then many years later, MAPS took this place over. So the National Guard, they went from having an air cav troop, basically a company-sized unit, to a battalion with many smaller units, and that presented opportunities for people to get promoted to first sergeants and sergeant majors and stuff like that. So it was a very exciting time and a lot of changes, and it always occurred that way. So we also, like I said, we dealt with our headquarters was actually in Cleveland on Green Road, near the Green Road Armory. And a lot of times we would purposely, if I could do it, I'd fly rather than drive, just so I didn't have to go to Cleveland, deal with that traffic up there. So in your brochures, you're going to see photos of the insignia and also the Air Troop, N Troop, 107th, the Cavalry. And I didn't say this before, but when the Cavalry first started, it was all horse cavalry. And so it, like in Shaker Heights, they had an armory up there, and it was actually a stables. And they still have a little museum up there, and it has a lot of the lineage stuff from the 107th. But they did not have any aircraft. They didn't have much in the way of. In fact, when they went to Germany, the guys that went to Germany, I believe that they were riding around with horses mostly, and towing their artillery pieces and stuff like that. So, and I don't want to lessen the effect of the other organizations like the 14th, 16th, which that was our higher level of maintenance that we didn't have the capability of doing it. They were highly trained. They could replace engines or repair engines and stuff like that. So the 107th was purely an independent recon unit, and it stayed that way for many, many years. The 416th Engineers had its own little, they had their engineer headquarters up in Cleveland, or no, I'm sorry, Toledo, and they had four 58s and 4 Hueys in there, and they had the appropriate number of pilots to go with that. So that pretty much talks about the organization, and I don't want to get too much into the lineage of the 107th way back. It's all interesting stuff, and I've got a book that if somebody wants to borrow, they can borrow it. But that doesn't get into what happened in this area specifically with maps and with the aviation assets that were right here. So we had and by the way, in the National Guard, approximately we had 65 pilots and aircraft, but we had only about, out of all the units, we only had probably 10% of the people that were full-time, and they were paid as a full-time employee, civil service technician, and the rest of the people were all part-time. So keep in mind that all the guys that were flying, most of the guys that you see here with gray hair, which is almost everybody, they had another job to do. We had one guy who was a doctor, we had one guy who was a nurse practitioner, and we have all kinds of mechanics and organizational people that they do everything else, and then on a weekend they came in here to have a good time, supposedly. That's what they always said about the National Guard. So, if you go on active duty, it's a whole separate pay structure and all that kind of stuff, and it worked out. It worked out pretty well for everybody, I think. And I just again want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and keeping in mind that this is the Veterans Day weekend, and we're thinking about people who have passed away, but also people who served, and it's just very important that you keep this lineage going. So thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Jim Boyer, United States Army retired, and Vietnam veteran.
Good evening. My name is Jim Boyer, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our MAPS Air Museum's Veterans Celebration for 2024. We are here tonight to honor all veterans and especially members of the 107th Armored Cavalry of the Ohio National Guard who flew out of this building for many years. I had the honor of flying with the 107th from 1971 to 1974. I joined the Army in January of 1969. After basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, I was transferred to Fort Walters, Texas to attend Army Flight School. Upon graduation from Army Basic Flight Training, I was transferred to Fort Rucker, Alabama for advanced flight training. I was 19 years old when I graduated from flight school and had my future planned out for me. First, I would do a tour in Vietnam, and then I would do the next 3 years either as a flight instructor at Fort Rucker or hopefully go to Germany. I would either stay in the Army for a career or get a civilian job flying after that. 30 days after graduation, I found myself in Cu Chi in the Republic of Vietnam. I was assigned to A Company, 25th Aviation Battalion, 25th Infantry Division, the Little Bears. I flew H-model Hueys and flew mostly command and control, resupply, ash and trash missions, and at times medevac. In other words, whatever was needed. During the Cambodian invasion, I was based in Tay Ninh. During this time, I lost 2 of my flight school friends. Fred Siminoff was also in the Little Bears. He crashed his Huey when he hit I-tension wires over the Saigon River. John Keenan flew Aero Scouts for the 1st Cav. He had always said he would never make it home. He was shot down 1 month and 4 days after we got to Vietnam. At this time, I got acquainted with guys flying Aero Scouts in the aviation section of the 2nd Brigade, 25th Infantry Division. I was intrigued by their OH-6 and the missions they flew. In August, I was able to transfer and become a scout pilot. My new call sign was Minahoney 7. When I had about 3 months left in my tour in Vietnam, the Army began cutting back on pilots. All warrant officer pilots would either get an early out at the end of their tour in Vietnam or go voluntary indefinite. Although I had considered staying in the Army, I took the separation. I was now a 20-year-old married father, ex-pilot, fresh out of Vietnam. It was a very difficult transition for me from flying in combat daily, trying to start firefights with the enemy, to being a civilian who had to downplay being a veteran due to the unpopularity of the war. I had a wife and a son I had to provide for. Other than my family, I had no one I could share my experiences with. I had to bury my feelings. After a couple of months at home, I heard of the Army National Guard flying out of Canton Airport. I came down and I was interviewed by Lieutenant Colonel Ray Galloway, the commander. His uniform is upstairs in the OMM room. I joined Troop N Air, 107th Armored Cav, and flew out of this building. Most of the pilots here at the time were Vietnam vets. I felt sorry for our commanders because keeping us in line must have been like herding cats. But now I had people around me I could relate to. I loved the flying and the camaraderie. It was a place where you could share your experiences with others who understood. I was only able to spend about 3 years in the Guard because of my civilian job. What I never really thought about before was how my experiences in this building while in the 107th helped me return to civilian life. So what happened to me over 50 years ago in this building was an important part of my life. Every day here is healing. I joined here in 2012, and every day has been a good day. I can now talk about my experiences and walk proud. I know that my family here at MAPS always has my 6. I have a poem for those of you who are not pilots. Those of you who are pilots will understand it. Once the wings go on, they never come off, whether they can be seen or not. It fuses to the soul through adversity, fear, and adrenaline, and no one who has ever worn them with pride, integrity, and guts can ever sleep through the call of the wild that wafts through bedroom windows in the deep of the night. When a good flyer leaves the job and retires, many are jealous, some are pleased, and yet others who may have already retired wonder. We wonder if he knows what he is leaving behind, because we already know. We know, for example, that after a lifetime of camaraderie that few experience, it will remain as a longing for those past times. We know in the world of flying there is a fellowship which lasts long after the flight suits are hung up in the back of the closet. We know even if he throws them away, they will be on him with every step and breath that remains in his life. We also know how the very bearing of the man speaks of what he was and in his heart still is. Because we flew, we envy no man on earth. Thank you.
We're going to have a video before our next speaker, Executive Director Kim Kaveski.
Founded in 1990, the Military Aviation Preservation Society, or MAPS Air Museum, has become a highlight for visitors to Northeast Ohio. The monument at the end of the road leading to the museum, dedicated to a former MAPS member who was a World War II pilot, is only the first indication of what you will soon experience. From the moment you walk through the door to the main hangar, you are surrounded by history. A history that you can view and in many cases to touch. The fascination with flight strikes you as soon as you see the first aircraft. A quote attributed to Leonardo da Vinci expresses it best. Once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward. For there you have been, and there you will always long to return. At MAPS, the history of aviation is more than just airplanes. It is about those who have dreamed of flying, those who ultimately made those dreams a reality, and those that have experienced the freedom of flight. We hope to share that and more with you during your visit to MAPS, where history takes flight. The aircraft you will be able to view include almost the entire spectrum of aviation history, from a glider designed, built, and flown by a local farmer not long after the Wright brothers' first flight, through an aircraft used in World War II, to a modern electronic warfare aircraft. You can sit in an aircraft similar to one that took American paratroops into Normandy on D-Day, and be seated in the gondola of a Goodyear blimp. You can take the controls of a Vietnam-era helicopter and walk through a representation of an Army field hospital. In the museum display rooms, you will be able to view displays honoring local men and women, not just those you read about in history books, but real people, no different from you, that did the extraordinary. From those who participated in the conflicts that we have studied, to those who worked behind the scenes to support those placed in harm's way. In some cases, you will be able to view videos and hear stories from the veterans themselves. You will be able to examine historical artifacts and read about events in the past that have and still do impact the present and will shape the future. You will be able to view a piece of the USS Arizona, a ship that, since December 7, 1941, rests under the calm waters of Pearl Harbor. You can look at displays honoring Ohio veterans whose courage under fire and heroism resulted in the award of the Congressional Medal of Honor, and in many cases, view the medals that were awarded. A statement written by an American philosopher in 1905 sums up what MAPS is all about and why the study and understanding of history is important. He wrote, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. We preserve and protect this history so that we may learn from it and hopefully prevent repeating it." When you visit Northeast Ohio, we hope that you will have the opportunity to visit the MAPS Air Museum.
I get to wrap this all up. Before I do, I'm going to have a little fun. I'm going to embarrass a couple guys. First of all, Jim Boyer has 23 air medals, 2 with Valor, and a Bronze Star. And you'll never know it. He's one of the finest men I've ever met. We received a congressional proclamation from Amelia Sykes when everybody was coming in, and I'm going to read it. In special recognition of the MAPS Air Museum, whereas World War I came to the end on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. And since then, Armistice Day, now known as Veterans Day, has been recognized annually on November 11th to pay tribute to all American veterans. Whereas serving our nation is an enormous sacrifice, and Ohio exemplifies this history of service. as more than 40,000 veterans live in Ohio 13th Congressional District, and more than 6,000 active duty military members reside in Ohio. Whereas the MAPS Air Museum joins today members of our community to honor American service members who come from many different walks of life, but are unified in their commitment to our country. Therefore, I, Congresswoman Emilia Sykes, do hereby proclaim my unending support for those veterans who made the brave, selfless decision to dedicate their lives to the service of the United States' safety and prosperity. Thank you, ma'am. Our mission here is to educate the public on the history of aviation, its impact on man. We have two missions that I talk about, to provide a place for these old folks to go and stay out of their wives' hair. 2 days a week, that's all we let them work, is 2 days a week. If we let them work every other day, they'd be here, and then it would no longer be a passion, it would become a job, and then they'd fight with each other. So we're not going to do that. You work 2 days a week. The last one is to honor our veterans, and that's exactly what we're doing tonight, to honor these people who've made the sacrifices. And it is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice for the families, and it is a sacrifice for those individuals. In 2013, about 15 months after I took the job as executive director, we decided that we wanted to hire an education director. I got some resumes and I started going through them, and then I got a special resume from this guy. He was a colonel. And I got to tell you a story. This isn't appropriate, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I know the boss, okay? I was enlisted in the Navy. My father-in-law was a Navy pilot. He flew TBMs off the Langley. And I knew that he was an officer because he was a pilot. And the first time I met him, he tried to intimidate the hell out of me. And he was about 6'2", 250 at that time. The very first time we were in his kitchen, and he started drilling me. Why did you get out of the Navy? And I wouldn't tell him. And he kept drilling me. Why did you get out of the Navy? And I said, well, there were 2 reasons. And it got quiet. And he said, what were they? And I looked him square in the eye, and I said, because I hated officers and I thought pilots were the most arrogant sons of bitches I ever met. I didn't know the guy won the Navy Cross. Okay, and so that's where my opinion of officers are. So I read this resume and I thought, what the hell am I getting myself into? You know, I mean, here's his resume. He's an aeronautical engineer from Syracuse. He has a master's degree in education from Indiana. He had 23 years retired as a full-bird colonel in the United States Army. He taught high school physics and chemistry. He retired as a high school principal. And this guy is going to come here and be the education director. Either there's something wrong with him or there's something wrong with me. Okay? Why would he take this job? Well, why would I take this job? I learned very early in my career, if you want to be successful, you hire people smarter than you. So to me, this was a no-brainer. He's way, way smarter than me. As I look back, he saw the potential and wanted to be a part of this, on what we've created here. He jumped into it with both feet, focusing on the Boy Scout campouts and the Cub Scout days. And over the years, we've brought about 10,000 kids to those programs. The high school visitation is for U.S. history. He wrote those in a way that we tie the Ohio State standards to their visit. The teachers love it. And over the years, we've brought about 20,000 kids to this program. He created a STEM, which is a program for the middle school. He trained all of our tour guides, but he also wrote volumes on each one of our displays and each one of our airplanes so that they knew what to say. We still catch them making us up stuff once in a while. He created the Air Academy, which I think is his pride and joy. That thing's amazing. He has 10 sessions, and you have a kid with a guardian come and they learn together. And there's aerodynamics, and there's weather, and there's navigation. How does a helicopter fly? I think Jimmy teaches that. How does a helicopter fly? I don't think he knows either. They're not supposed to fly, right, Jim? Okay. And he jumped in with both feet to the MAPS Speakers Bureau. You can tell the kind of speaker he is. He's amazing. But he goes all over Northeast Ohio doing speeches for us. He did one at Rittman one time, and it was on the picture. We took the Kiowa out there for him. He created a lot of videos. The quality of his videos are amazing. That one you just saw was his video. He wrote it, produced it, and spoke in it. He wrote lots and lots of policies and procedures. He helped set up tables, take down chairs, and move airplanes. He wouldn't drive the tug, though. He refused to drive the tug because he knew I'd make fun of him. In summary, he has his fingerprints all on everything here. His contribution has been felt in all aspects of this organization. We were sitting around the round table over on the other side, and Reed had gotten some tools out, and he was going to fix the signs that are out in front of the airplanes. They had rotted, so he's going to tear some apart, and he was going to put them back together, and he was going to paint them. And we looked at each other, and he walked out of the room carrying all these tools, and he said, I looked at the guys and said, somebody better go with him. You never give an engineer a screwdriver because they can hurt themselves. He was a perfect roommate. I don't ever remember him saying anything bad about anybody, ever. Well, there was just one time. Okay. And he looked at me, and he shook his head, and he said, that guy's really starting to piss me off. That's the worst in 12 years that I heard. He let me play my own music, and he used to call it white noise. He never complained. Every once in a while, I'd look at him and say, and I'd put his music on, which is musical and show tunes. I can handle that about 15 minutes. And then I either get up and leave, or I said, Reed, I can't handle this anymore. We're going to change it. Okay, I'm an enlisted sailor, but I was a businessman a lot longer than I was a sailor. Most of the time I have the business hat on, and I actually have this look that my daughter calls the resting bitch face. Okay. That I'm so focused that I don't smile, and I always look like I'm mad. I don't like conflict, but I'll never back away from it, especially if I'm defending maps. And when that happens, I immediately turn into a sailor. I remember one time he was watching the situation develop, and he simply say, he simply said, "This is not going to end well." The best thing I've ever done here was to hire Colonel Kimball and turn him loose. Stay the heck out of the way. Reed, we should all be very proud of what we've created here, and you were a major part of that journey. Thank you very much. I'd like Reed to come up. I got something for him. We almost had a sailor bail out an Army guy. It simply says, "Thank you for your leadership. 2013-2024. Colonel Reed Kimball, Director of Education."
As Kim said, it's been my pleasure doing this. It's a demanding environment if you want to get everything done that you want done. And it's time, well, we talk about in Air Academy the lift drag curve, where it goes up and then at some point the airplane stalls and it comes back down. Well, a good leader knows when you get to the top of the curve, it's time to find somebody to keep the curve going upward. And at age 74, it was my time. But it's been a pleasure working with you. I will still be here. I think I missed, one day last week? I took Friday off, so I will still be around. I'm not disappearing on you. Thank you.
Each February, I do a presentation to the membership of all the accomplishment for the year. And I showed it to Reed one day several years back, and we were getting a lot of stuff done. And he just looked at me and shook his head and said, "If that doesn't impress him, nothing will." So thank you, Reed, for all your support and everything you've done here. First of all, I want to thank all the tonight's visitors. Thank you very much. We want to thank the print shop for the programs, the color guard, the bartenders, the Ohio National Guard for coming. General, thank you very much for your words. MAPS volunteers who helped with the program. There was a whole committee that did this. MAPS restoration crew for maintaining the aircraft. People don't understand that. These things rotate about every 8 years. So these guys have to redo the airplanes because they're sitting outside. So if anybody wants to give me money for a hangar, I'll take it. We're going to try to build a hangar out there that's twice as big as this so we can put our airplanes away. MAPS restoration crews, thank you very much. One person we don't talk a lot about, but he does a fantastic job here, is Bob Hollis. And he handles the gift shop. He designed the T-shirts. I think he's on target to do $100,000 in the gift shop. That's a major contributor to our profitability, and we receive no funding from the government, so we're self-funded. So thank you very much, Bob. I'd like to thank the board of directors and our staff. We just increased. I had to replace Reed as a director, and then I brought 2 more directors on board so that I could pick up some of the other stuff that he did. So it took 3 guys to replace Reed, kinda. All the MAPS volunteers. for all the people who worked on this project for this event, please stand up. Mary Lou and Peggy and everybody stand up. And then Mr. Mike's Catering. We have a friendship with them. We're partners. When they closed the Myers Lake Ballroom, there was a bunch of equipment that was left over. They didn't know what to do with it. So I talked to Terry Baker, who has recently passed, and Terry said, we're going to put it up in the kitchen for there. And we worked out a deal, a handshake. People don't do handshake deals anymore. I still do. And me and Terry made a handshake deal. And we'll say, we'll give you our preferred catering. So anybody who does stuff here, we do it through Mr. Mike's. I don't think we've ever had a bad meal. And thank you very much for those people. Okay, we got one more thing to do, and then I'm going to shut up. I want one person to raise their hand from every table. You can, don't break each other's arm, but put one arm up. One person from every table, put your arm up. Okay, we got this done yet? Hurry up. Come on, this isn't that hard. Okay, everybody got it up? You're number one. We're going to go either way, counterclockwise or clockwise. You're number one, count to 8. Go around the table with a number. Then remember your number. The guy with the hand up, and when you're done, put your hand down. Okay, everybody done? Well, Jan, put your hand down. Okay. She does all our books. She's wonderful. I don't know how Jim puts up with her. There's two people I'm afraid of, Jan and my wife. Okay, now you remember all your numbers? We're going to pretend we were in Vietnam. Remember when they lined us all up and you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2? All the even people, okay? Well, let's start it this way. All the odd people, 1, 3, 5, 7, okay? They get a helicopter. Everybody else has to go to Vietnam. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Dave now. Thank you very much.
All right. As the color guard detail prepares to retrieve the colors, again, thank you very much for attending. Immediately after the retiring of the colors, please feel free to stay. We'll have a bar will be open. There's high top tables back there. Again, please feel free to stay, hang out with us for a while. Oh, yeah, I did earlier. Yep, in the beginning. Okay, Mary says the gift shop will be open. The Way Cool t-shirts that we have that Bob Hollis designed, those will be on sale there. T-shirts, sweatshirts too, right? Yeah, so those are cool. With the Jan's, look at that. She's still a gorgeous model. I have to get points, so those are points. All right. Please stand for the retiring of the colors. Color guard detail, retrieve colors. And that concludes tonight's ceremony. Again, thank you for coming, and please stay around a while. Thank you.